Hello and welcome to this on-demand video for preparing for the occupational specialism in Digital Business Services T-levels. This session is designed to guide and support your planning and delivery of Year 2 with a specific focus on the Data Technician occupational specialism. So Year 2 focuses entirely on the occupational specialism, and in this route learners will undertake 4 assessment tasks, each aligned to real-life digital role-specific skills. All content and skill development should be embedded before the controlled assessment window opens in April. Let's explore how we get there. So firstly, what changes in Year 2? So learners shift from building general digital and business knowledge to applying their skills in realistic technical project scenarios. They will be expected to interpret client briefs and plan data handling approaches, source, prepare and validate data with precision, and use tools to analyse data and identify trends and insights. They'll also need to present their findings professionally using appropriate formats. And they must be able to reflect on their own performance and suggest improvements. So in Year 2, the expectations are technical, structured and closely aligned with real-world data practices. Your role changes too. You shift from instructor to coach and facilitator of professional behaviour. You'll guide learners to work ethically, securely and accurately, helping them to understand and follow data handling protocols, refine their planning and documentation, and build their confidence in analysis and communication. You'll also help them to respond to feedback and to develop a professional mindset. So this slide outlines the performance outcomes that form the foundation for assessment and practice in Year 2 of the Digital Business Services T-level occupational specialisms. These outcomes define the knowledge, skills and behaviours that students are expected to consistently demonstrate in both placement settings and during controlled assessments. So let's look at how we can bring each of these to life in our teaching. So performance outcome 1, source data from a range of identified sources. This outcome is about helping learners to confidently identify where to get their data and how to do so legally and ethically. Some strategies to support this could include using sample briefs to practice spotting which sources are relevant and appropriate, running research activities that compare different types of data, for example structured, unstructured, internal and external, and facilitating scenario discussions about data protection and compliance considerations when sourcing data. Performance outcome 2, which is around collating and formatting data to support analysis. So here, learners need to develop strong technical skills in preparing data for use. And we can support this by demonstrating step by step how to clean, validate and format data sets, by providing practice exercises with deliberately messy data so students build resilience and routine, and using peer reviews so learner can spot inconsistencies in each other's prepared data and suggest improvements. Now for performance outcome 3, which is analysing data to identify trends and patterns. So this outcome is where learners start applying analysis techniques to draw meaningful insights. Some effective strategies here could include guided walkthroughs of basic analysis in tools like Excel or Power BI, mini projects that require students to summarise what the data shows and why it matters, and group discussions around why certain patterns or trends could impact a business decision. Performance outcome 4, which is around communicating results of data analysis to stakeholders. So students must learn to be able to translate technical findings into clear, useful information. And to develop these skills, you could have learners create presentations and data visualizations for a specific target audience. You could use peer feedback sessions to focus on clarity, accuracy and professional tone, and run role plays where learners explain insights to a non-technical client or manager. Performance outcome 5, which is to maintain data security and integrity. So this outcome underpins everything else. Data must be handled safely and compliantly. So teaching strategies here could include scenario exercises where students decide how to handle sensitive or restricted data, quizzes on GDPR or an organisation's data policies, and simulated tasks where learners identify risks and describe how to mitigate them. And then finally, performance outcome 6, which is reviewing and refining own practice. So here learners are expected to reflect on their work and identify ways to improve. And you can support this by encouraging students to keep a reflective journal after each project or task, providing self-assessment checklists so they can evaluate what went well and what could be developed, and facilitating peer discussions about lessons learned, helping students build professional self-awareness. Remember, the aim is to make these performance outcomes feel familiar and achievable. When students understand them in context and practice them regularly, they gain both the technical competence and the professional confidence they'll need in their future roles. So let's now walk through the 4 assessments that make up the data technician occupational specialism. Each one is externally set and marked, and each assesses a number of the performance outcomes. These tasks are not standalone. They're designed to work together, building a rounded picture of a learner's competence across practical skills, professional reasoning, and written communication. So we'll start with assessment 1, which focuses on the planning stage of the data project. So this task requires students to carefully interpret a brief and create a plan for sourcing and preparing data. They need to demonstrate that they can understand the client's needs, can select suitable data sources, and consider legal and ethical factors like data protection and compliance. To prepare students for this, we recommend using sample briefs and helping them break them down to identify what the client actually wants. Give students checklists to structure their plans and model planning language such as the data source I will use is, or this method is appropriate because. This helps learners develop confidence in making informed, justifiable decisions. So task assignment 2 focuses on collating, cleaning and validating data. Here students must demonstrate practical skills such as working with raw data, identifying issues and documenting their steps clearly. To help students succeed here, you could use practice data sets with intentional errors, so this gives them a safe environment to test their skills. Also reinforce the importance of documentation. Students should record what changes they made, why, and how it improves data quality. Time-limited cleaning challenges can also be helpful to build automaticity, and peer reviews allow students to practice evaluating each other's work critically but supportively. And in assignment 3, learners analyse the prepared data set to produce meaningful insights. This is where the work really starts to look like what a professional data technician might do. They need to apply appropriate analysis techniques, explain patterns and present their findings in a way that meets the client brief, and this could include visualizations, summaries or reports. So your role here is to provide a range of structured analysis tasks, gradually building in complexity. You could start with small data sets and increase the challenge over time, and encourage students to practice explaining their findings verbally and in writing. And you could use sentence frames such as the data shows or a trend identified is. This helps students articulate their thinking clearly and professionally. And finally, assignment 4 is all about reflection. So students need to evaluate their own performance across the project, what went well, what could be improved, and how they maintained data quality and security throughout. This can be a challenging task as it requires a thoughtful and professional tone. So to support students, you can regularly build reflection into class activities. For example, after a task, ask, what did you do well? What would you do differently next time? How did you protect data quality or ensure accuracy? and model professional reflective writing and show students that it isn't about criticising themselves, it's about demonstrating maturity and readiness for the workplace. And finally, some key tips across all 4 tasks is to help students understand how each part connects. So assignment 1 sets the plan, assignment 2 prepares the data, assignment 3 draws the conclusions, and assignment 4 reflects on the whole process. And embedding regular, low-stakes practice aligned to the performance outcomes can help build fluency and confidence. And above all, ensure that students feel comfortable with both the technical and communication aspects of the role. They don't just need to handle the data, they need to explain it, justify their actions, and evaluate their approach. This timeline outlines a suggested structure to help students develop the knowledge, skills and behaviours needed to succeed in the occupational specialism assessments. It focuses on gradually introducing all 6 performance outcomes and building assessment confidence. So in the first half of the autumn term, focus on performance outcome 1, sourcing data, and performance outcome 2, collating and formatting data. So teach students how to identify suitable data sources, access files securely, and manage file types and storage. Also help students build confidence with data cleaning, validation and preparation tasks. And embed routine use of correct file naming conventions, version control and data security protocols. Then in the second half of the autumn term, introduce performance outcomes 3 and 4 in terms of analysis, insight and communication, and an introduction to performance outcome 5. So here you could use structured tasks to develop skills in summarising data sets, identifying trends and applying basic statistical methods. Model how to present findings clearly through tables, charts, dashboards and written summaries aligned to business needs. And introduce performance outcome 5, which is maintaining data security and integrity in practical contexts, reinforcing security protocols and ethical handling during analysis tasks. And then in the first half of the spring term, focus on the assessment readiness in terms of assessments 1 to 4 and introduce performance outcome 6. So deliver full mock assessments using realistic scenarios and assessment conditions. Support learners in linking all 6 performance outcomes to each task. For example, planning relating to performance outcomes 1 and 2, data preparation to performance outcomes 2 to 5, data analysis and insight, performance outcomes 3 and 4, and evaluation and improvement for performance outcome 6. Also, you can teach performance outcome 6, which is to review and refine own practice, through structured evaluation tasks by asking students to reflect on their efficiency, accuracy and improvement opportunities in their approaches. And then in the second half of the spring term, from March onwards, it'll be the controlled assessment delivery window. So during this time, deliver the formal occupational specialism controlled assessments 1 to 4 within the NCFE assessment window. Here you can support learners with the final preparation, helping them to manage their time effectively and meet the expectations for clarity, professionalism and completeness of tasks. Ensure learners feel confident applying all performance outcomes holistically across the assessment tasks. And of course, this is just a suggested planning framework, adjusted to suit your own learners and delivery model. You may find it useful to plan backwards in terms of designing your curriculum with the performance outcomes and assessment tasks in mind. Also align activities with the real-world expectations of the role and ensure students consistently rehearse the skills they'll need to demonstrate, especially around data integrity, clarity of communication and reflective improvement. So how do we bring the performance outcomes to life in a digital business services classroom? Year 2 demands more than content coverage. It also demands precision, routine, professional judgment and clear communication. And this means that our teaching strategies need to reflect the structure, pace and professionalism of the assessment process. So you could start with classroom walkthroughs, model a full workflow, interpreting a brief, checking assumptions, preparing or validating data, analysing it and communicating findings. Talk aloud about not just what you're doing, but why each step matters, whether it's legal compliance, data integrity, or business impact. You could introduce checklist-based routines for regular tasks, such as preparing a data set for analysis or formatting outputs to meet client requirements. Repetition of these procedural steps helps learners develop fluency and confidence in real-world skills. Build in opportunities for peer reviewer roles, so get students observing each other's data workflows using simplified checklists linked to specific performance outcomes. This can help students develop critical reflection, collaboration skills and awareness of quality standards. Encourage structured write-ups after key activities, so you could use a standard format aligned with assessment expectations. For example, what was the task? What decisions did I make? What risks or issues arose? What could I improve? And this can build the reflective professional communication skills they'll need for assessments 1 and 4. And finally, don't shy away from error simulation tasks. Give students flawed data sets, incorrect formatting or poorly communicated findings, and ask them what went wrong, how should this have been handled, what would you do differently? And these tasks build not only technical skills but also judgment, problem solving and the ability to reflect, all of which are vital to success in the assessment and in the workplace. Ultimately, strong teaching in Year 2 is about preparing learners to be confident, competent and trusted professionals in a digital workplace. We'll move on now to talk about assessment fluency. So this is the kind of fluency that goes beyond just knowing the task. It's about understanding what success looks like, how to show it and how to communicate it clearly. In Year 2, learners need this fluency across all 4 parts of their occupational specialism assessment, from planning through to execution and reflection. So how do we help them build that? You could start with colour-coded tasks linked to specific performance outcomes. If students can see, for example, that they're practicing performance outcome 2, which focuses on data cleaning and preparation, and then see it reappear in an assessment brief, they begin to connect the dots. So it's about making the hidden structure of the qualification more visible. Next, normalise assessment format through weekly mini tasks. These could be short data exercises where students clean a data set, interpret a small data set, or explain a risk in handling client data. They're not just rehearsing their assessment, they're building familiarity with how to apply skills in an assessment environment. Then there's scaffolding written and verbal activities, especially for responses to typical task prompts. So you could use sentence starters such as, to ensure data accuracy I would, or this insight is valuable because, or a possible improvement to the process might be. And also encourage students to speak their answers aloud first and then reflect on how they translate that fluency into written evidence. Use peer feedback regularly, not just at the end of a task. You could provide simplified success criteria and get students to review each other's work using phrases like, this demonstrates performance outcome 4 because, or to improve this, you could explain how the insight supports the business goal. And then finally, encourage students to reflect on their placement experiences using assessment-aligned prompts. Because assessment fluency isn't about memorising a script, it's about building clarity, confidence and professional competence, it's important to support students to think and write like data technicians. It's important to recognise that students often feel pressure in Year 2, especially around their occupational specialism projects and assessment deadlines. That's why creating a learning culture that values progress over perfection is key. So start by making space for mistakes. Ask what went wrong, what could I try next? This normalises iteration and growth and becomes part of the learning process. Before major tasks, offer verbal walkthroughs to help reduce anxiety and allow students to rehearse their thinking. Talk through the expectations and break down complex steps out loud. Scaffold planning and reflections, especially where written communication is required. You could use sentence starters, peer dialogue, or structured frameworks to help students process and structure their ideas more clearly and therefore ease the cognitive load. Set up a calm, focused environment before technical assessments. Something as simple as a quiet, tidy workspace or a predictable routine, or brief mindful exercises or clear checklists can make a big difference. And finally, remind students that working with data, like in any tech setting, often involves uncertainty and iteration. Progress and problem solving are more valuable than getting it right first time. And when students feel frustrated or unsure, acknowledge these emotions and help them link that experience to real-world professionalism, resilience and adaptability in the tech industry. Because ultimately, technical skill is only part of the picture, emotional confidence matters just as much. There's a lot of NCFE support available, so make sure you're making use of things like the Chief Examiner reports, student exemplar materials, past papers, schemes of work and free teaching materials that are on the qualification page on the website. Also, upcoming CPD sessions can be booked through the events link on the website, and we have our YouTube playlists where you can find a variety of short, bite-sized videos around different elements of the programme. And just before we finish, I'd really appreciate it if you could take just a few minutes to complete this short feedback form. Your insights are really valuable because they help us improve the content delivery and usefulness of these recorded on-demand resources. So you can scan the QR code on the screen to get started. Thank you in advance for taking the time to share your thoughts, and I hope you see you at some of our upcoming events. And thank you again. I hope you found the content of this video useful.